and you'll find them right out there. So, feel free to run out whenever you have to, because the food is really good. Eat as much as you want. We have plenty. But my name is Belinda Berrigan, and I am the Director of Community Engagement at Hispanas Organized for Political Equality, aka HOPE. It's so much easier to say than that long thing I just said. But we're here today to discuss mental health, more specifically to encourage you to pursue a career in this much needed field. To start us off, we have a great list of guests that would like to welcome you to this event. Can everybody hear me okay? Is that all right? All right. I know I'm usually really loud, but then sometimes I get shy, if you can believe that. First, I want to say that the importance of choosing a mental health career, you're going to hear from a distinguished panel. And then after that, outside, we'll have some tabling. So we'll have a couple groups that you can stop and chat with and see what kind of programs they offer, if there's internships, or just to learn more about the mental health field in general. But please have your questions ready after the panelists. So then that way you can ask them, write it down so you don't forget it. And then also, we would like for you to complete also a quick survey. So on your tables, there's a QR code. If you want to just scan that before you leave and, let us know how we're doing, what else you want to hear about. We'll be more than happy to bring additional programming. And then lastly, I also wanted to acknowledge the many students that have joined us via Zoom. So we have over 100 and some on Zoom. And then for the individuals on Zoom, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat. So we'll start with the Zoom questions right away as soon as the panel's completed. And I am going to go ahead now and introduce, well, first let me tell you why we're here and give you a few stats about that. So we're hosting this mental health career symposium because HOPE and BWOPA, which is the Black Women's Organized for Political Action, we released a historic statewide poll on the current state of mental health for Black women and Latinas in California. And then our research draws a direct line between the challenges in accessing mental health care for Latinas and Black women, and the shortage of mental health professionals who share our backgrounds. The data is a call to action for healthcare providers and educational institutions to address the negative impacts of a healthcare workforce. And that does not represent the communities it serves. So that's why we're doing this here today. We want to make sure that you consider these programs. And then according to the Medical Board of California, only 4% of active psychiatrists practicing in California are Latino, and only 2% are Black. So there's a huge need for people of color to really think about this career. And as we know, mental health has been a very strong issue. Okay, now am I too loud? No, I'm really loud? No? Okay. Well, I want to be heard either way. So the poll findings stated that there are numerous barriers to mental health care that exist for Latinas and Black women. There were a few points that really shocked me in this poll that we did. More than 62% of California Latinas and Black women report having a mental health concern for which they never sought care from a provider. 62%. That's huge. 52% say it is difficult to find a counselor, therapist, or mental health care provider who shares their values or come from a similar background. So they're not comfortable because they don't see somebody who looks like them that they think can relate to them, right? And then 69% of Black women and Latinas report that racism and discrimination take a toll on their mental health. And that's huge, right? I mean, we have to be able to exist every day, and there's those issues that, if racism's part of that, how do you move forward? How do you help yourself with that? So Latinas and Black Americans, young people, women, and those with low incomes were and remain most at risk of mental health challenges. So after this poll, we came up with, key recommendations, and I have 3 to share with you. One was, there needs to be a key investment to be made by healthcare providers and universities to increase the number of women of color who enter mental health professions. 2, for healthcare providers to lower costs. And 3, for community groups to bridge the lack of knowledge women of color have about mental health. So it's up to us to start sharing that information about, I know I come from a Latino family and everybody's like, oh, you don't need that. You don't need that. Just talk to your comadre, talk to your sister, right? but sometimes you can't tell everybody everything about how you're feeling. So I think it's important that women do seek this counsel, this help, because maybe it's something that they need and they just need to share with someone outside of their circle. So these few facts that I shared with you, we hope that you will consider a career in mental health field because there is a huge need for students like you. Now I'm going to introduce our first welcome speaker. So I hope those statistics shocked you just a little bit as much as they did me, because I think that's what we're doing here. We just want you to consider, know a little bit more about the mental health careers, and our distinguished panel will be sharing with you various pathways as well. So to kick us off, it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to our partner from Black Women Organized for Political Action, also known as BWOPA. Here to represent them is the Area 5 Director, Callie Todd Griffin. Callie is BWOPA's representative in Los Angeles and Southern California. She will give additional details about how we work together on this mental health initiative. So join me in welcoming Callie.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Well, we're from, Call and Action. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I think it's still morning. Yeah, it's still morning. So thank you. Thank you for having us here today. Thank you, Hope, for being such a phenomenal partner. We appreciate you. We've been working on this for a year, and we're so excited of kind of the results. And this is just the next stage in order for us to move this agenda forward. And we want to make sure that, what we look at is we look at policy, we look at research, and then policy, and then after policy, practice transformation. So this opportunity is when we get the data, we want to act upon that data. Some of the things that we recognize from the survey, particularly about representation. Representation is so important to women who want to receive care. They don't want to receive care from people who don't understand their journey. And so what we found from the survey was that particularly with Black women, that they delayed care because they were afraid of what was going to happen when they get to the doctor's office. They were afraid that their issues were going to be discounted, shooed away. Like, you can do it, stay strong. They were worried that they were going to get medication that was going to change them, that was going to make them feel a little different. And we know that there's a history of that in our culture, but we didn't expect to see that in the survey around mental health. So some of the things that we paid attention to in the survey, I got to take off my glasses. I can see you now. I can't see you. But we know that 53% said it was difficult to find a counselor, a therapist, or a mental health provider who shares their values or comes from a similar background. 45% said it was difficult to find a mental health provider who offers free or low-cost services. And we know that that's an issue, a huge barrier. 41 say it's difficult to find a counselor, therapist in general for mental health where they live, where they work. We also know that 69% of Black women identified the cost of treatment as a serious concern. 7 out of 10 Black women identify the length of time that it takes to find a provider. So even when they find a provider, they're on the list. And if you're going through a mental health crisis right now, you don't have time to wait 3-4 months to see a provider. And so we know that's a barrier. 6 out of 10 Black women express concern they may be prescribed medication that they don't feel they need or would make things worse. So to put that into perspective, we had one respondent, and I just want to share her story. Being a Black woman, single mother, sole provider is hard. It gets even harder depending on where you live. People think that the phrase strong Black woman is a badge of honor. It isn't. It is a label that means there is never anything wrong with you. Don't ask for help. Don't expect help. Deal with it on your own. We are women who go unseen, unheard, and unappreciative. Thank you for asking. She was a 52-year-old Black woman who lives in Stockton. The survey highlights so much for us And what we know is that this initiative really is important to us because we want to make sure that students see mental health as a viable career opportunity for them to lean into, not only because it's a career opportunity, but the need is great. And we hope that you will look at this career, make it a priority to find out more about how you can lean in, because it's not just the providers. You can be so many other things in that office that helps guide women as they come in to receive care. And so we want you to take this moment to learn from our phenomenal panelists. And I want to thank you again for coming and thank Hope for being a phenomenal partner. Thank you so much.
Miss Kelly, before you leave, wanted to give you a little hope notebook and tell you thank you for being here. Yes. So in case you're wondering, we have these great little notebooks that Hope has put together. This way she can take notes about mental health and the careers that there are to offer so we can share with others. You know, I think there's something to say about us being in this room together, right? That others don't have opportunity to be here. So it's up to us, as one of the findings said, share the information that we have in front of us. And make sure to, you know, share. We're going to have this recorded. It'll be living on our website, so you can always share that with them as well. So again, thank you, Kelly, for being here. And thank you to BWOPA for being such great partners to champion healthcare for Black women and Latinas. So let's give it up for BWOPA one more time. Now to welcome us to Trade Tech, please help me in welcoming Los Angeles Community College Board of Trustees, David Vela. He is a LA native and has had an extensive career in public service. His public service work includes time in Sacramento, working for an assembly member and for a state agency before returning home to work for the late Supervisor Gloria Molina. Mr. Vela has also served on a board of education as a board of education member for the Montebello Unified School District. After his government jobs, he created his own government consulting firm, Velada. I think for me it stands for desvelada, like you're tired, right? Like, pero ni modo. Okay, so which focuses on social capital projects such as low-income housing and provides solutions for responsible businesses, unions, nonprofits, eco-businesses, and governmental agencies. Trustee Vela received his Bachelor's of Science from the University of California, Los Angeles, and he holds a master's degree in public policy from Pepperdine University. And he resides in Malibu, Montebello. I just made you move. But please join me in welcoming President Vela.
All right, good morning, everyone. How are you guys today? Such a beautiful day, isn't it? It is fantastic. You know, first of all, I just really want to thank all of you for being here, for our students on Zoom. It is definitely very heartwarming to see so much interest in mental health for our Black and Brown women. And, you know, as we move forward today, I want us to really understand how important it is that we did it here at Los Angeles Trade Tech, one of 9 colleges in the Los Angeles Community College District. You know, our food here today is being served by our culinary students. Let's give them a round of applause. They are fantastic. And, you know, I want to take us back really quickly, pre-pandemic. You know, at that time, we were really looking at data and looking at how important it was, for example, for Black and Brown women and women of color to come to our colleges to get an education, to continue and further their careers. As we were looking at this data, we were looking at these numbers of 60% of our student body was women. And then we were looking at how many of these women were single mothers. The vast majority of the women were actually mothers, many of them single mothers. But the one thing that we saw across the board was that many of these women were experiencing housing insecurity and food insecurity. So then the pandemic hit. And then it was like, what do we do? You know, we're barely trying to, catch all of these, important solutions at that time, putting up student housing projects, trying to get basic needs. And then we have the pandemic, and then it becomes something about how do people feel about coming back to our colleges once this trauma happened to our communities. It wasn't something small. We really, really come to it. And so what we started to realize is we had to act fast. So the first thing we did when our students came back was we enlisted the help of all of our clinics at our colleges, from ViaCare to Altamed, all of the clinics, and ensured that they had a mental health hotline number. And then immediately at the board, as president this year, I pushed $750,000 for a mental health app that is now available to our students on their phone, so that they can have access to mental health services. And now, thanks to Supervisor Lindsay Horvath and Supervisor Solis, our teams are meeting on a daily basis and weekly basis with the Department of Mental Health at the county, and we're lucky to hear from our panel on how important the county is for Black and brown women as they seek mental health. And so what we learned is that we had to, one, really act fast, create a village, and then encompass it within the guise of basic needs. Because 6 years ago, I was told and laughed out of the state legislature when I was a trustee because I wanted to build specifically housing for students that were single mothers and foster care. And they were like, David, community colleges are not in the business of building student housing. You can't build dorms. Are you crazy? But guess what? Most of the students that were sleeping in our parking lots were women. And I had to put the sheriff's department on check and let them know that you can't just ignore this population. And so at that time, again, we passed a $5.3 billion bond, set aside $500 million for student housing, emphasizing on single mothers, emphasizing on foster care, in order to ensure that there are the needs. Because I got to tell you one thing, we talk about stress with not having a place to live. That is the worst stress that any human being can have, not knowing where you're sleeping that night. And so as long as this board, and I really want to thank President Alfred McQuarters, who couldn't be here today. I want to thank my colleagues at the Board of Trustees, because we are swiftly pushing these policies in order to provide these basic needs. And I harp on basic needs because that is a big part of why our Black and brown women that are students are experiencing mental health, because they're worried about where their kids are going to sleep that night. And don't let the facade fool you. A lot of them have jobs, some of them have decent cars, but they need those cars. Well, the other thing we did is we pushed, Metro to also give our students a free Metro pass. That was a congressional line item that we advocated for in Washington. But look, all I'm trying to say is this is exciting. I want to really thank Kaiser too. Claudia Goitia is here, who I work with in Sacramento. She knows how crazy it could be on mental health. So I want to thank her and thank Kaiser. I want to thank Hope, because they are literally always at the forefront, bringing it here to Trade Tech. I really want to thank you, Belinda, and Hispanas for organized political equality. And then I really want to thank you, Ms. Todd, because, as Black women, we always have to understand that the need here in this area is also greater than what we think. We're not always aware of how many of our students, especially Black students, are experiencing this type of discrimination in housing and food insecurity. So I really want to thank you for bringing light to that. And pleasure meeting you today. So welcome to Trade Tech. On a brighter note, I just want to thank all of the administration for continuing to support programs like this, and really for bringing this light to attention. Whatever we can do, we're here for you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I just want to thank President Bella because he is the reason we're here. We called him and told him we had this idea, what we're trying to do, and he's like, all right, I'm gonna find you a campus. And he put people on there with us, and here we are today. So thank you for your support always, and little notebooks so you can take notes.
Nice. Love it. Thank you very much.
So I think all the stats that he just shared with us, especially about women sleeping in their cars, and he did say about safety, that has to be pretty scary to be in your car, and hopefully that you have, protection. I'm sorry. That you have protection, that you have a safe place to lay your head down, and that, you're not afraid to, where do you go to the restroom at night? What do you do? How do you get up out of your car and go and not know what's around you, right? So I think for all those reasons, again, want you to still consider all these pathways to mental health careers. And so I am now going to start and introduce today's conversation and poll, whose data I shared earlier is sponsored by Kaiser Permanente. And joining us today to share why this topic is of importance to them as one of their largest healthcare providers in California is Claudia Goitia, Associate Director of Government and Community Relations for Kaiser. At Kaiser Permanente, Claudia is responsible for leading strategic planning, government affairs, and community relations in Southern California. Please join me in welcoming Claudia.
Hi, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and I want to thank all of you for your participation here today. As we discuss pathways and opportunities to careers in the mental health profession. So Kaiser Permanente has a long history of supporting and collaborating with HOPE. It is wonderful that we're here with you today to be part of this very important conversation. So as mentioned, I'm Claudia Goitia, Associate Director of Government and Community Relations at Kaiser Permanente for all of Southern California. And Kaiser Permanente, we're proud to provide healthcare to over 4.9 million members and employ over 81,000 staff and over 8,100 physicians. We have over 200 hospitals and medical offices throughout Southern California. Maybe some of you were born in one of them. I have the pleasure of working with elected officials like President Vela and trade associations, community groups, which I see one represented here today, and advocacy organizations like HOPE to engage in public policy change and dialogue on important issues that impact health and the well-being of our members and the communities we serve. Let me share with you a little bit about how Kaiser Permanente shows up in the conversation of mental health workforce development. And at Kaiser Permanente, we provide high quality mental healthcare and services that are tailored to our patients' social, cultural, and linguistic needs. As we talked about today, culture, linguistics, all very important. And we know that our mind and body are connected, right? As was discussed earlier today, and that total health includes mind, body, and spirit. We know that our mental health care system is fragile, as mentioned earlier, and needs a boost in workforce to keep the demand for mental health services going. And it's no secret that the United States urgently needs more mental health professionals. So nearly half of the US population lives in areas without enough therapists or clinicians. According to the Bureau of Health Workforce, most states will experience shortages of licensed mental health counselors by 2030. So that's a sobering figure. And rural and low-income areas and communities of color are expected to suffer the most of these shortages. So that's why we're here today. It's very important that we have this conversation. The increased demand for mental health care predates COVID-19. So even before the pandemic, we were having a shortage in workforce. So the pandemic's soul-shaking impact on our sense of security, combined with the stresses of our modern world, have cemented mental health and wellness as an essential healthcare need for all. In 2021, Kaiser Permanente hired nearly 1,000 youth therapists nationally, and we're actively recruiting to fill additional openings. With growing numbers of clinicians approaching retirement age, At Kaiser Permanente, we're actively supporting the well-being of our members and communities through various programs that support growth, development, and future mental health workforce. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. So, for example, our Mental Health Scholars Academy supports members of our own workforce who want to become mental health clinicians. So we take our own employees who want to be mental health professionals and pay 75% of their tuition at a master's program and give them the opportunity to train in Kaiser Permanente settings. By doing this, we are increasing the diversity of mental health workforce, and it's something that was central to the mental health scholars mission. So when someone sees a therapist who speaks their language and is like them in some way, it can help open those doors for them to get the care that they need. In addition, at Kaiser, we train hundreds of masters and doctoral level clinicians every year at Kaiser Permanente sites. We're doing this with a strategic emphasis on graduating bilingual and diverse students who reflect the people within the communities they serve. So did you guys know that in California, you need 3,000 hours of supervised clinical experience to become licensed? And unfortunately, the US doesn't have a formal program to ensure graduates can get those hours. So at Kaiser Permanente, we're helping with those students and providing them a space to get those hours. Another way that we're supporting the growth of mental health workforce is via grants. Kaiser Permanente announced a 2.3 million grant to NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Health Illness, to help build a regional model and increase access to mental health services across California. We recognize that this is a complex issue, a complex problem, and it requires not just the healthcare industry, government, but it requires you all, you young folks, to be our next leaders, to really consider this as a profession, as a space for you to make a difference. I mean, the demand is there. So what more opportunity and value in a career that there's a demand for, where you can actually make a difference for someone in their life. So I want to just say thank you again for having us here. Thank you to Hope for inviting us. And I hope that today the discussion moderated by Dr. Evita Limon, who is Limon Rocha, who is an MD, MPH at Kaiser Permanente, that the conversation today inspires you, and you see a path for yourselves in your career moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you again, Claudia, for being here with us, but actually thank you for all the work that Kaiser does to make sure that mental health is at the forefront for many of us that need assistance. But also thank you for your partnership and continued partnership with Hope. Appreciate you. So now let's start with our distinguished group of panelists. So to kick it off, I am going to turn it over to our moderator, Dr. Evita Limon Rocha. And I first want to say her outfit is on point. Her and I kind of thought the same with the papa color here and there. But of course, she looks way better in hers. But I just want to say thank you, Dr. Rocha, for being here. She is a Latina Spanish speaking, duly board certified child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist. She received her bachelor's degree from UC Riverside and her master's degree in public health in health policy and management, as well as her medical degree from UCLA. She completed her psychiatry residency program at UC Irvine and completed her child and adolescent psychiatry fellowship at UTHSCSA in Texas. I don't know what that means, but that could be one of the questions you ask her. But Dr. Rocha's ultimate goal is to decrease stigma around the utilization of mental health services and mental health diagnosis, specifically within underserved communities such as the Inland Empire and the Latino community. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Limon Rocha to the stage. And then if I can have the other panelists, please join us up here as well. And she'll be setting the stage, so if everybody can just come up. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. There we go. All right, so bienvenidos, welcome. I am super, super excited. Every single time I talk to students, I dress with purpose. So I am Latina de Raíces Mexicanos. So my dad is from Jalisco, so I definitely have to represent my cultura with what I wear. And there's something very important. Dr. Loaiza designed this shirt. And one thing that I want to highlight, as a Latina physician, I'm part of the 2.4% of the US physician workforce that are Latina. Clearly, with all the numbers that we have just heard, with the huge mental health need that we have, that's extremely low. The other thing that I want to talk about is I am a child and adolescent and adult psychiatrist. I don't know very many Spanish-speaking Latina child and adolescent psychiatrists. I can think of one, Dr. Lubliner, in the state of California. So again, there's very few of us that are here, and nuestra comunidad, our community needs us. So definitely I am very, very excited to hopefully convince you guys to write your name down. So you guys have pens and papers, hopefully. I want you, the students, to put your name down on a piece of paper and put MD, DO, MFT, LSW, whatever degree. I want you to take a moment and do that right now, because I need you to see this as real and as something that we need you. I cannot stress that enough in terms of the mental health needs of children, of adolescents, and of our adult population. So with that, I'm going to invite our very distinguished guests to come join me. So I'll have them come join me up here. And we have a list of wonderful questions. And definitely also, there's going to be a portion where you guys will get to ask questions related to the mental health field, because it's clear. I don't think there's a doubt in this room that we need more. Necesitamos más, right? That is clear. So now the next step is that we need to have you see yourselves right here, right? That is my goal of what I do these talks for, because I need you to see yourself with that title, right? So with that being said, because we definitely, it's clear. I wanted to, and then again, the goal of this workshop is you guys visualizing yourself with those titles, right? Your comunidad, we need more Spanish speakers. We need more individuals that understand cultura, that understand all the different aspects that are so important in terms of our mental health care and our mental health needs. So let's see. I get very excited when I talk to students, and I get very excited when I talk about mental health and psychiatry. So try to contain my energy. All right. So I have these wonderful, amazing individuals with me today. So what I'm going to ask them to do is I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about how they found their way into the mental health space. So we'll start with you first, Sylvia. I think our very distinguished speaker.
Is this on?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. I am probably the least steeped person on this panel in mental health, but I'm very happy to join you because I'm very aware of the need. I was mental health deputy for Sheila Kuehl for a short period of time. And in that time, I learned that mental health is a stepchild in the health community. It is not given the respect that it deserves. It is not given the person power. It is not given the diversity that it requires. And it was very disheartening to me to see how little energy really goes into meeting the needs of particularly low-income communities of color. So it made me aware when I left the Board of Supervisors to join Charles R. Drew University of Medicine and Science, that we really needed to emphasize the mental health aspect. And so we do training. We bring in 28 new physician trainees a year. And then they spend 18 months working on a specialty afterwards. And many of them pick mental health because we expose them to patients, particularly at Martin Luther King Hospital, who need the services of the mental health community. So I'll stop there and we'll talk
Sounds
later.
good.
Thank you.
Natalie.
Hi, good morning. My name is Natalie. I actually, it was kind of like a long journey, but I had a curiosity of human behavior as a child. And I kind of went in my head of like, where can I fit in this? And I also am very curious about when people experience adversity, how do they cope? How do they manage? And what leads people to engage in certain behaviors after they experience adversity? And I personally have a special interest in children. And so I also have, I mean, I know people may or may not know about it, but there is research on the school to prison pipeline. And how do we support our children and not engaging in some of these systems? Life has happened to them, right? And in many spaces, especially as we're talking about Black and Brown, and you're coming up in a low income and you have experienced trauma and lots of disruption in family systems. And so how do we support these children so that they can become successful adults, so they not encounter some of these systems, some oppressive systems? Sometimes it's avoidable because of the color of your skin, but it's essentially how do we support individuals and families and communities within these systems. And so that's how I became interested in becoming a mental health therapist, because I wanted to be a part of the change. I want to be a part of supporting individuals, families, children's, and not having to continue to suffer with the oppression, because oppression is here, but how do we help manage? How do we help support so that they're not continuing to just completely being beaten down constantly? So that is essentially why I got into this work. I am passionate about people. I care about people. I care about communities. I care about people of color. And so that is why I became a mental health therapist.
Awesome.
All right, I'll try to keep mine in a nutshell, but I'm also very passionate about mental health, and specifically, I was in my undergraduate program at UC Santa Barbara studying business administration. No, I'm sorry, business economics. I wanted business administration and I thought they were the same things, and it wasn't. And so I didn't do well. There was a lot of numbers involved, and then I went into communications. I was trying to get into that major, and I also failed it. And at this time, I was also pregnant, and I was going to become a single mother. And I related with so many of the statistics that were being said. And I would just hear from people at that time, you know, you're going to be a dropout, you're not going to finish your studies. And I had, you know, very religious Catholic parents, Mexican and Guatemalan parents that were also very ashamed, right? Because I got pregnant out of wedlock and I was going to become a single mom. And so there was a lot of mental health things that I was currently experiencing, being 2 hours away from my family at this university. And it wasn't until I was actually, I went to office hours for an abnormal psychology class. And the professor during office hours, like, looked me in my eyes and asked me, "How are you?" And, you know, it wasn't like I could answer just that automatic, like, "I'm good," right? And just roll on through. He looked like into my soul, like he saw something that I didn't even realize I was experiencing. And he told me that I should use what my tuition is offering, which was the counseling center, and that I should go talk to somebody. And I remember leaving that office, like, just really reflective and pensive and just wondering, like, why didn't I ever think of that? Why didn't I ever think to talk to somebody? And so I did, and I went, and I remember after the first session, I felt immense guilt because I heard my mom's voice. We don't talk about our problems to other people. We resolve them in the family. And so after that, I just felt this, I didn't continue with therapy, but I felt this immense craving of healing and wanting to continue. So that's when I got into, you know, I got the idea of going into mental health. And I didn't know exactly what area, but I knew I wanted to finish my bachelor's in psychology, and I did.
Awesome. And I think that's a really, really good point in terms of mental health is health. And we're continuing to fight that stigma that mental health is any different than a broken bone, just like we wouldn't have a second thought of getting help for our broken bone. That is my hope too, that we bring to the forefront of saying, that's a medical problem. We need to seek treatment. And there's lots of different types of treatment. So along those lines, Miss Evie, it's clear that mental health is an incredibly important issue. Can you tell us how the need has increased since COVID? And then why is it important that government fully fund mental health care?
Well, we are located in South LA, and when COVID hit, the president of the university said, we have to test. We have to test because people are not testing in South LA. And so we set up testing, and people came by the droves. You know, they just lined up all around the block to get tested. And in the process of meeting people that we really hadn't met before, because we're an educational institution, we were meeting residents, Black and brown, and they would share with us more than they were coming for a COVID shot. And we learned what was going on in their lives. And we saw that there was a huge unmet need for personal, caring support for their mental health struggles. So COVID was a gift to us in that regard, in letting us know people more broadly, and then trying to rise up to meet the demand. Thank you. For the services that we saw were needed. We are still just a small school. We're not a great big school. I tell people we have 3 buildings. You know, you compare how many buildings UCLA has, for example. But it's a mighty effort to train people of color in medical care, in mental health services. Our physicians spend 28 months after their training in specializing, and many of them specialize in mental health. So we take students from inner cities because that's who we want to train, because we believe our students will go back to their home to help their families and friends and places that they love. It's not just a charitable thing. They go because that's where they feel at home and needed. So it's a very special calling. And I'm so happy that we're linking mental health services to that mission. Deborah Prothro-Stith is our director, and she specialized in helping teens with mental health problems. So you know that was a specialty that she developed when she was trained at Harvard in Boston. So that's a little about CDU, but I urge you to look us up and look at what the programs are. Consider that as a part of your future educational opportunities.
And Charles Drew is doing an amazing work in the community. Dr. Loaiza is kind of faculty there, and a leader and a pillar within healthcare. So I think that they're been kind of doing wonderful work for many, many, many years.
Thank you so much. I think they have been, because they have to do it as part of their training. They want to do it, but they have to do it too. So it's not true in other places. You don't have to do it.
But I love the mission. Adriana, can you talk about your work with the Latinx therapy and the work that you do to break stigma of mental health in the Latino community? So something near and dear to my heart.
Absolutely. Yes. So, you know, from where I left off, I ended up becoming a licensed marriage and family therapist. And within the first year, I found myself very frustrated. So this was in 2017. And I was frustrated because when I opened my private practice, I got full really, really quickly. And I didn't find it to be fair that people, Latinos seeking therapy for the first time, were going to be sitting on my wait list. You know, I just didn't find that to be fair. And I also had people driving so my practice was in Porter Ranch, and people were driving from San Diego, from Bakersfield, and I couldn't find local resources. I was frustrated with trying to find referrals for them that were more closer to them. And so that's where the idea came about. I thought, okay, I'm having these sessions that I don't see reflected in media, because what I see on TV is not what's happening in here at all. There's no, flavor, if you will. The homework is very different. So I thought, let me launch a show in order to interview other therapists and also members of the community that want to share their mental health story and destigmatize therapy in a very collective way. I was too shy for YouTube, so that's why the bilingual podcast came about. And from there, I got a feature from Apple Podcasts / iTunes, and they featured me right next to Oprah's show, whatever was going on. I think she had a podcast, perhaps. And so I went viral, and I got hundreds of messages that first month of people saying, I never thought to go to a Latina therapist. I always just took whatever my insurance gave me. I always just accepted whatever, help was available. I never thought, that was the theme of all of these messages. And so I found myself getting burnt out because now I was searching for Latino therapists in Massachusetts, in New York, and I'm just oriented here in the San Fernando Valley. So that's where then the Latinx therapy directory came about. And when we launched, we had about 98%. I think consistently that stat has remained the same. About 98% of our providers are Spanish speakers. So in terms of the impact, we are definitely a national resource now where people trust us to not only listen to our podcast and get education, debunk taboos, right? It's very specific cultural taboos, but also be able to find a provider and learn how to ask for sliding scale, because we have a lot of resources on the website, whether it is self-help books. We can't assume that everybody's ready for therapy as well, but we have frequently asked questions on there as well in English and in Spanish. And then we use all of our social media platforms to continue discussing these things that happen in our homes, but, we don't really see them too much reflected again on TV or in any other way. So
Which is extremely powerful work, right? In terms of having those conversations, creating spaces, putting those thoughts, esos pensamientos, in the thoughts of our families, right? Because it's very hard. And so I think that's amazing. Now, on that note, you've been working for over 8 years with the 0 to 5 population. So tell us about kind of what it is to work with this demographic and what do mental health services with this demographic look like?
Yes, thank you. So minor correction, I've been in the field for 8 years, but I've only been working with 0 to 5 for a little over 2. Just want to make sure I kind of clarify that information. But I get asked this question all the time when I tell people that I'm a therapist for 0 to 5. I get the reaction like, what? Like, what kind of problems do they have? And what do you do with them? And so I'm super happy to even have this opportunity to talk about it, because it is definitely a topic that is not addressed enough, because we don't consider, yes, children are people, right? And we have this concept that they are people, right? But I think at the core, I don't think that their emotions are really taken into consideration and how they feel about things, because they're just told to just do, and they're just told to just stay over here and just follow these certain sets of rules without really considering how does this really make them feel. So, and to circle back a little bit, trauma does, for some, unfortunately, children start as early as the womb. And that is when parents are pregnant, right? And they're in a domestic abusive relationship. That child feels that. They feel that stress, they feel, obviously the impact, right? If they are being, through the domestic abuse. And as we highlighted early, right? A pregnant person, homeless on the streets, that's very stressful. That's toxic stress. And so again, babies inside the womb, they are taking in that stress from our parents. And so when they come out, they might have some behavioral problems or extreme dysregulation. And, parents are trying to figure out, well, what's happening with my child. And so that's kind of where I come in, right? As a therapist for 0 to 5, supporting this population is we mostly do play therapy, but also the brain develops the most rapidly from 0 to 5. Our brain will never develop as fast as it does from the age of 0 to 5 ever in our life again. And so these are very formative years. These are foundational years. And through providing that support, right, we're helping, again, lay that foundation and helping parents and caregivers connect to their children, to understand their children, to understand what does this behavior mean, or when they do this, what are they really saying? Because children don't have the words to communicate what they're feeling. They tell you through other means. And I help support caregivers and parents in understanding, what is this child really trying to tell us? What is this child really trying to tell us about their experiences, especially if they are in the foster care system and, they have been through a lot of things, even, the separation from parents. I've had babies who have been taken from their mothers at birth, because we have 7 incarcerated mothers. And so that's a level of trauma when your attachment is disrupted from your parent. They have a lot of feelings about it. Again, they don't have the words, but they have a lot of feelings about it. I come into this space and I help them understand their experiences. I create meaning and words for their experiences. And again, it's really helping repair families and the bond and the relationship between caregivers, parents, and their children. And so that's a little bit kind of about what I do. And when we lay the foundation for children at an early age, we're helping them set themselves up for the future. Better emotional management later down the road when they go to school and when they go to high school and when they become an adult, that foundation was created in that 0 to 5 years when they're learning and absorb, because they learn so quickly. And they apply so quickly. I'm always so amazed how I will just say or do something, and then the little ones just pick it up like that. I work with adults too, and it's a little more challenging. It takes a little bit more time for that to sink in for adults to apply. But that's the beauty of children and this population.
Right. And I think one thing with play is that that's the way kids see the world. And through play, a lot of individuals are able to, so a lot of times I work with parents and they're just playing. And it's like, that's how you see a child, how they see the world, how they play with the dolls. If they're throwing the doll across the room, if the dolls are playing nicely, what they draw. And I try to explain to parents that the play is work, that the play matters. And that's how you get into the child's world of how they see their family and everything that's going around them. And through play, you heal. And so that's one thing that's so powerful about therapy, is that ability to heal. And the other thing that I tell parents is a lot of times therapy is so important in terms of providing skills. As a parent, we don't automatically know how to raise our very distinct children that have very distinct personalities. So therapy is a way to work and strengthen that relationship as a parent. So I try to explain that, because it's like, oh no, now we're I'm a failure as a mom, I'm a failure as a parent. And it's like, no, we want to grow. We want to be better. We want to be a better parent of how to deal with child that's getting kicked out of daycare 6 times because they're kicking and they're hurting other individuals, and kind of working with how can we express these emotions in a way that we heal, in a way that we're no longer hurting, but in a way that is not disrupting the family, but everyone's working together towards healing. So it's really, really beautiful work and powerful, right? Because it makes a big difference early on in terms of educational attainment and life if we start that healing early. So definitely 0 to 5 is a really good place to start that healing if we're struggling.
Yes, and I say thank you so much for adding upon that about the importance of play. I didn't touch upon it, but thank you so much for sharing that, because it's more than it beats the eye, right? And it does take a training and to understand, but children are telling you about their experiences through play. They're showing you their world through play. And so, yes, thank you again for adding on that to that piece.
That's a stigma that I've come across with families, that what my patients will come and say, well, I don't want to do therapy because all they do is play. And again, and that's why you guys being and joining us as mental health providers, it matters, because then we can translate that word, we can translate that concern and say, no, this is how we heal, right? We tell our communities, no, this is important. This is treatment. It matters. So again, that is why each and every one of you seeing yourself with those different degrees today is so incredibly important. And on that note of educational journeys, Natalie and Adriana, can you share a little bit more about your educational journey, and then any advice that you would share with our awesome audience in terms of pursuing a career in the mental health field? Adriana.
Sure. So after I got my bachelor's in psychology from UC Santa Barbara, I took a year off because my GPA had suffered. And before applying to master's programs, I wanted to get experience in the mental health field. And so I did a lot of research assistantships. I did a volunteer one through Children's Hospital of LA at their autism clinic. And then I got a job at a nonprofit in Altadena, doing research as well. And I worked basically with the measures that the clinicians were providing to the children at the residential facilities there. And so from that, I got my experience. I got, people to be able to provide letters of recommendations, and had opportunity to connect with my son, who was a newborn, right, when I was going to UC Santa Barbara. At this time, I think he was turning 2 by now. And so I applied to programs where personally there wouldn't be a thesis. There's like a party going on here.
I know. Start dancing.
Where there wouldn't be like a thesis or a capstone, because I was a very stressed out single mom at that time. I was helping my parents with a mortgage. I was doing side hustles as a lifeguard and a swim instructor while trying to apply to a master's program and working. So there was a lot going on culturally. But I did get accepted to Pepperdine University, which was the program that the structure I was looking for. And I volunteered in their culture and trauma lab so that I could be able to publish on my own time. I worked alongside Dr. Tama Bryant Davis, who does a lot of wonderful work around trauma and sexual assault survivors. And so from there, within the Pepperdine's program, it was the marriage and family therapy emphasis. And they have like partners connected so that we could apply for their internships, where we're supposed to get a total of 3,000 hours. We're capped at around 200 hours during the program. And then after we graduate, we continue, and we could get paid at that point once we graduate. And so from there, I worked at Strength United, which is another, my passion was in trauma. So I worked with domestic violence survivors and sexual assault survivors of different ages. It could be children, it could be adults, in individual and group formats. And I think these experiences and internships are so important for us to realize what we're actually passionate about and what we're not, what we're emotionally capable of tolerating and what we can't. During those 3,000 hours. And it could be a very painful, emotional experience for some folks. And so having the right mental health support and people around you is really important, because being a graduate student in mental health brings up a lot of things. And so we definitely need support. We need to learn how to ask for help and receive help, because that's what I noticed too culturally, is that we know we need to ask for help, but we tend to prioritize helping others versus our own selves. So in regards to my journey, that's the timeline essentially. And you sit for a 4-hour exam once you get your 3,000 hours, which is crucial. And when you pass your licensing exam, many doors open. So now I'm not only a trauma therapist, but I have a group practice, and my group practice has 8 Latina therapists on staff. And from that, I'm also a podcaster. As you know, I'm a speaker. I go to different states to provide talks on mental health and how to destigmatize. I've been offered to teach as well at colleges and universities. So really I think it's important for our emotional balance as well to consider other things besides providing individual therapy. It's beautiful, but to reduce burnout, I find that that's a healthy thing to do.
And then, Natalie?
Yes, thank you. So I have my undergraduate degree in psychology as well. And after I graduated, I knew I wanted to be a therapist, but I was like, man, which route do I take? Because there's a few routes that you can go through. You know, we're both therapists, but we both have different degrees. So I was like, what would be best for me? So I explored that there's like an education route, which is there's, you know, an LFT, which is, I'm from Texas, by the way, and that wasn't like a huge degree in my state. So I didn't even know of becoming an LFT, which is a licensed marriage family therapist. There was a lot of other degrees, and I was like, but none of the degrees that I was looking at seemed to fit who I was. And I learned about social work. And as many people I can imagine, right? I only had one idea what a social worker was. And usually it's not highlighted in the best light. You know, I had the misconception that social workers were the people who come and take the children away, right? They work at CPS or DCFS here. And I learned that there's so much that you can do with a social work degree. So I spoke to some universities in my area when I was in Texas to learn more about social work, because it was, I worked at a residential treatment center after I graduated from my undergrad, and I spoke to some of the therapists there, and I kind of got guided and pushed to social work, and I fell in love. I absolutely love social work. It offers such diversity because, yes, I love being a therapist, right? That's a therapist route. You can do so much with a social work degree. And we are here to talk about mental health, right? But I'm going to be completely transparent. Being a clinician is not for everyone. Being a therapist is not for everyone. It is definitely worth exploring if it's an interest, right? But I am going to be blunt. It is not for everyone. It is hard work. And so what also attracted me to social work is that you can still be an advocate for mental health. You can still work in policy, programming, technology like IT and AI, all that stuff is coming out. And a degree with social work, you can advocate for humans and for the mental health within employment, right? A lot of our jobs are toxic and stressful, and there's not enough policies in place to support our workers mental health wise. And so the beauty of the degree is that you can place yourself in different places if you find that being a clinician is not for you. So, but advocating for mental health, if that's your passion, again, there's multiple routes to do that. And definitely advocate for speaking, you know, to lots of individuals in the field if this is something of interest, to explore what works for you. And as far as selecting a school, I went to Washington, I just blanked out on my own school, Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri. But I specifically chose that school because of the diverse options of educational background, meaning like they have lots of different concentrations, and they talked about lots of different modalities. Being a therapist, it's so important to learn and explore all the different modalities, because as a clinician, I pull from all those pots. Like, I don't specifically use one. It's a blend of lots of different treatment modalities, especially as we're talking about looking at a cultural lens, especially as we're talking about working with Black and Brown communities. We have to learn to tailor our treatment to our community. And so I would definitely advocate, if this is an interest, looking at what kind of programs does the school have? Do they discuss and talk about different kinds of treatment? And do they talk about other things, not just, maybe one, which is like CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. That's probably like the predominant one, but there's so many different modalities out there that we can learn from. And I would definitely advocate for exploring and looking, what does your school offer? And do they offer enough to have you feel well prepared? Because I would definitely say that coming out of my graduate program, I felt well prepared from all the opportunities that I was awarded at my school because of what they offered me. And so that's just a little bit about my educational and track.
So lots of amazing pearls. So one of which is mentorship. So that's why I love Mi Mentor, finding individuals that are in your field. If you are interested in medicine, find a mentor in medicine. If you are interested in learning about kind of the different, because there's so many different ways, right, in terms of the opportunities and chances that are available, and have an interview, an informational, me atoré con las palabras, but I got stuck with my words. But in terms of learn and ask them, how'd you get there? Kind of what do I need to do to get there? So ask those questions as a student, go up to these amazing individuals and kind of have that informational interview. Again, those mentors, I love Mi Mentor for that reason, because again, it's offering opportunities within the healthcare field of getting exposure to those different individuals of how did you get there. One thing I wanted to highlight that Adriana mentioned is one of the things I love about working in the mental health field is that a lot of times students will tell me being a psychiatrist is too hard. That sounds really scary. That sounds really tough. But one thing I appreciate is life is tough for everybody, right? We all guaranteed have someone that is struggling with some sort of mental health diagnosis. The CDC has highlighted lots of people are struggling, right? So with that being said, one of the things that I love about the mental health field is that we're getting training and preparation to address those different things. We're being encouraged to work on ourselves so that we can be better providers. We can work more appropriately with patients and understand where we struggle with challenges. So that's why sometimes when I work with other individuals in medicine, that's the joy and the wonderful beauties of being in psychiatry, is that we're encouraged to work on those areas. So I don't want that to deter you of saying, oh no, you guys deal with hard stuff all the time. I don't want to go there. But again, we all deal with very challenging things. So it's so important to say, yes, I am going to work on kind of the things that I'm struggling with because I want to be a better version of myself. And so again, I encourage you to have those informational interviews, ask those questions, find out those mentors, because again, I bet each and every one of us have had phenomenal individuals, communities that have invested in ourselves. So again, seek out those mentorships. These individuals that are speaking, I bet you want to see you guys join us. They're passionate about their fields. They care. And so again, more reasons to say, yes, we want to join you in the mental health field. And again, the sky's the limit in terms of what you want to do, whether it be kind of any specialty. And of course, Miss.
I just wanted to share that unlike these three experts, I didn't start in mental health. Okay. I started out as a lawyer. And what happened, I was a civil rights lawyer, and in my travels in the South, I found out that mental health services were provided, but they were not provided for people of color. Mm-hmm. And so that made me very angry that there was this whole need, especially in communities of color in the South, of what they had been experiencing and what their parents had experienced and so on. And that's how I came to it. So you don't have to decide today that this is going to be your career. But what I hope you'll take from this conversation is the mental health need is there. And wherever you land, don't forget that there's an unmet mental health need that you can be a part in finding and helping people access. So that's what I do now through the university, helping the students not forget the mental health piece of it, wherever they are, if they're nursing students, if they're public health students, If they're medical students, the mental health piece is just part of who we are, particularly minorities. If you're concerned about your community as a minority member, you know that we have mental health challenges, and you need to use whatever skills you attain to make that be part of what you're doing.
And at the end of this, stigma warriors, right? We have to analyze our thoughts, our behaviors related to health-seeking behaviors so that we're encouraging ourselves, right? Because we got to start here, the person looking back at the mirror, our community, whether it be our family, educationally, work community, wherever that may be, to help and encourage health-seeking behaviors, including seeking mental health services. So definitely. And I think we are at our question. Okay, we still have some time. All right, so now we have my favorite question. So we have, sell me on mental health. Why should I join you in the mental health field or be an advocate, right? Because every single one in this room is an advocate. So we'll start with our wonderful attorney, lawyer. Let me know, why should I join you and being an advocate and the mental health field?
Well, you know, credentials matter to people. You know, you know, in your family, you can try to help somebody and they say, you don't know anything about this. I've had that experience. But if you study and you say, I studied this and I've learned the parameters of this particular problem, can I share with you what I know? Can I share with you who I think might be helpful to you? Let me be one of the people who helps you. So it's just giving yourself legitimacy. You're caring people. You wouldn't be in this room if you weren't caring people. But caring is not enough. Sometimes you have to have a little credential to say, I'm allowed to help you. Listen to me. Let's work together. Am I right?
So we are all human beings, right? And every single one of the people in this room and in this world, we all have emotions, everyone. And I like to shine light on that, so people like, oh, well, okay, you know, yeah, but how do we work with that? How do we work with people? And through my education and through this field, I have really learned to understand not only myself, but others better. So this field has, I will be transparent, it has helped me be a better person. I am just going to say that. Like, I have learned more about like the human psyche, and I've learned more about the complexity of emotions and how we show up and what that means and what are people trying to tell us without telling us. I mean, it's a lot. And I love that because I carry my work, and not that I go around like people like, oh, I'm a therapist, so you go around analyzing everybody. No, I don't do that. But I go around, I have a better understanding of people, and that helps me build empathy. And I'm more likely to now manage my feelings and my emotions when I'm interacting with someone else. I'm like, you know what? It's not about me. It's really them. And so that has helped me keep my sanity in so many ways. And so not being able to use, of course, my skill within my profession, but then take that and apply that to my day-to-day. I am, again, a more sane person because I understand humans and I understand the complexity of emotions and I understand the meaning and behaviors of others so much more. And it has been so rewarding, I will just say, because again, I live a happier life because I understand.
Absolutely everything that's being said. So what I'll say is that, you know, as y'all know, I became a very young parent, and it definitely has helped me in that area. It's helped me become, well, when my mom was alive, it helped me become also a better daughter in the sense of learning what boundaries were needed in a dysfunctional home as an adult. It's the reason why you should join is not only for that, but because it's honestly a very fulfilling and rewarding type of environment, industry, if you will. I mean, we're in the helping profession, right? But there's, like I mentioned earlier, there's so many different avenues that you can go into, and us being Black and brown the avenues are wide open for us to create new modalities for our community, new theories, to help new communities. Just overall, there's so much that I envision within our community, and that has actually been happening, that many of my colleagues have been doing. You can also become an author. Like, there's just so many things that you can do within the field, not just being a therapist or a social worker, or there's so many different things you can do. And so I encourage you to explore what these options can be. As what was mentioned, interview people and always advocate for yourself, because that's always going to be needed in this field, unfortunately.
And mentorship is key. Again, seeking out those mentors, looking at all the different opportunities. I know Hope is always having lots of really awesome opportunities in terms of leadership, seeing what's out there. And so definitely ask those questions. So now, on that note, we're ready for your questions. What you want to learn, anything that you want to ask. I think we're going to start with the Zoom questions.
Yeah, hi. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Okay, awesome. Good afternoon. Thank you all so much for joining us. I'm sorry for those of you who can't see me. There's no stairs on this side of the stage, so I'm blocked for half the room. But my name is Lauren Salais. I'm the Youth Programs Manager here at Hope. I've been manning the Zoom, and I have a couple questions here. The first one I want to start with is, what advice do you have for those students who know that they want to go back to school to get their master's degree in the mental health field, but really aren't sure what program or really what specific area of focus to go into?
Well, that was my struggle. So, and I highlighted it a little bit earlier. And sorry, I'm hearing a little screeching. So, but I kind of knew generally what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to work with kids. So after I graduated, I was like, let me find a program working with kids. And I landed in a residential treatment center. And so then I asked the therapist there, okay, tell me about your journey. So like the mentorship, and then taking some time to do some research. I looked at lots of different programs from across the states. And I said, I found a lot of, personally, I don't know if I was looking correctly, but I found a lot in education. And I was like, that doesn't really fit. Like, I don't really want my degree personally, right, to be in education. And so I just kept looking and searching to find something that was right for me. And through me asking the questions of a clinician at the residential treatment center, I discovered social work. And as I mentioned, I was in Texas, and I went to a local school, and they do informational interviews. Like, you don't have to go to that school. I did not attend this university. I went to the Department of Social Work. I scheduled a meeting with someone at the department, and I said, hey, tell me about social work. I have no idea. Like, what can I do in this field? What does this mean? What does it look like? And I was like, you know what? That's it. That's for me. That's who I am. And so, but through those seeking and question asking and lots of research and exploring programs. I mean, I spend lots of time on Google sometimes, just like looking stuff up. I was able to find what I wanted. I took 3 years off after I graduated, by the way, when I needed a break. So I advocate if you're stressed or tired, school can be a lot, take a break, and then maybe get some clarity. It's okay to take a break, get some clarity and figure out what you want to do. Like, society sometimes pushes us to figure it all out. And society is like, oh, but it's okay. Take a break, take your time. Because this is your life and you want to be able to find the right fit for you. And I did that. I took my time to figure out what I wanted to do. And I'm happy, again, for the choices that I made.
And my hope is you are empowered to ask those questions. You feel empowered to send those emails. You feel empowered to go and meet with that person. Because I think one thing, I work with students quite a bit, and they feel afraid. That person's very busy. I don't want to ask the questions. Please, if someone gives you their email, meet with them, ask those questions, schedule that kind of informational interview and say, what is it like? I want to learn more. Because I think one of the things, I didn't know what a psychiatrist was really, or what that field was, until I was a third-year medical student. Did I really understand what it was and what they did? I knew about family medicine, I knew about primary care, but I did not really understand what it meant to work as a physician in the mental health field. So again, it's so important to get those experiences, so important to feel empowered to ask. Please ask. Our community, I feel like a lot of times we're afraid to ask, and I don't want us to be afraid. I want us to go say, voy a preguntar. I'm gonna ask, all right? All right, let's see. Next question.
What advice do you have for those who are wanting to get licensed but feel like they don't know enough about their field and are struggling with imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I'd say definitely following what Natalie has just said, and in regards to imposter syndrome, it almost feels inevitable. And I remember I was with my public speaking coach, like probably 4 months ago, and I've been doing public speaking since 2018. And she's like, you have the track record, you do about 50 engagements a year. And sometimes we just need to hear the facts from other people, but we also need to hear it from ourselves. We don't support ourselves enough sometimes. And I think something that also has been helpful for not just myself, but many of the clients that I work with is reflecting on our own inner dialogue. What does that look like? How much self-compassion is embedded, within that voice? Or whose voice is it that we have going on? How much encouragement do you share with yourself? And so I think that's just one snippet of imposter syndrome, but overall imposter syndrome comes from a systemic issue where historically we haven't belonged and we haven't felt like that. And the spaces haven't been created for us, but we're here now, and, we're here to claim space, right? Which is what we're doing at this symposium right now, everybody here. So I encourage you to take inventory of your achievements, to put them maybe as your screensaver or on a piece of paper whenever you're doing something very brave, and remind yourself with very loving affirmations, and not just towards your own self, but also towards that inner child that is so proud that you are where you are today.
Thank you, and I love that. Definitely. And bravery is not the absence of fear, but doing things even when we're afraid, even when we're shaking, because again, our community, we need more individuals to help, especially in the mental health field. So definitely. Now what we're going to do is we're going to turn over to our audience to see if you have any questions. Go ahead.
I'm one of those people that have no clue about any of it. So I'm really excited about everything I've heard. And I'm a highly creative person, and I'm wondering if art has any place in therapy, and how do I go about finding out about it?
Yes, there's a whole modality called art therapy. So that's the beauty, right? Again, of this work. You don't have to do your traditional art. There's even theater therapy. So it's not as widely practiced here in California. It's a little bigger in New York, but it still exists. And if you find a gap, you could always create it. So just because it's not super here, or it's not like super prevalent, like there's always a space for you to create something. But again, looking at the programs, I'm not if either one of you are familiar, but it's, there's a program here in California that has an art therapy program. We have a few interns at my agency that are going through the program, and I cannot remember the school, but if you were to just look up programs for art therapy and just look which schools offer it, you'll definitely be able to find it, because it's a whole thing.
And I think typically you have to, it depends, because you could become like a coach, right? A mental health coach doing art, some sort of art therapy. But typically from those programs, it's that you have to become licensed as a marriage and family therapist or as a social worker, have some sort of license in mental health. And then the supplement is that art therapy specialization.
Yes, thank you for adding upon that part. In order to be an art therapist, you do have to become a therapist first, and that is getting your degree. You know, as an LMFT and LCSW, there's an PCC. There's a couple of other ones as well, but yeah. Acronyms, and I don't remember them all. But yeah, so you would get your degree in a therapy role, and then you can specialize in art therapy.
Hi, my name is Gisela Topete. I just want to thank you guys for being here today and for having such insightful answers. And I was just curious, and this is a question for all the panelists, but what are your typical days look like?
You guys go. You guys go. My typical day is supporting the president of the university, and he has nothing whatsoever to do with mental health. But I work with the College of Medicine and the mental health providers in the College of Medicine. I work with the College of Medicine and the School of Public Health and School of Nursing, just trying to raise the visibility of the need in the communities that we're serving for more mental health services. And with respect to the last question, I would just add that if you're an artist or if you know people who are artists, they can offer their assistance to people who are trained psychologists or psychiatrists, because they may not have any capacity before it, but they would love to have some help from people who actually know how to do something artistic, which I would guess most mental health professionals don't. So that's just my thought. I don't know whether the professionals would agree with me on that, but if I were one, I would love to have your help if you're an artist.
So in terms of, there's lots of different ways of working with individuals. I work in terms of the medication aspect. And I work in collaboration. So I work with mostly children and adolescents, but I do work with adults as a psychiatrist. And so in terms of what a psychiatrist is that typically they go to medical school, and we're talking about looking at the overall health of the individual, whether it be we're looking at thyroid issues, we're looking at vitamin D, we're looking at all the medical aspects that are impacting the health of the overall individual. And we're not necessarily always prescribing medicine. We're having discussions with families in a collaborative way of how can we help, whether it be working with awesome colleagues doing PCIT, which is parent-child interactive therapy. I'm a huge fan. Or if it's working with teachers and the school district, or advocating, right, that this child needs more support within the school system. So again, the sky's the limit in terms of mental health, and I hope that you're realizing that the sky is the limit in terms of what you can do. So I'll turn it over to my awesome colleagues.
In regards to my day-to-day, I actually blog a lot of it on TikTok and sometimes on my Instagram stories. Latinx Therapy is the handle, but it really depends. Every day looks so different for me because I also supervise associates. After being licensed for 2 years, you can supervise. So that's been a really wonderful experience. And I hold individual and then monthly group supervisions. So sometimes, I'm hearing cases. The next hour, I may be going to the office to pack merchandise because somebody bought something from the Latinx Therapy shop. I may be in a meeting preparing for some sort of brand collaboration. Last year, I did a brand collaboration with Breyer's Ice Cream, and they wanted me to create a bilingual or a toolkit. Yeah, it was bilingual, Conversaciones Vainillas, for multi-family households, multi-generation households, I'm sorry, and how we can communicate, about mental health with multi-generations. So that was really wonderful. But yeah, it's really, really different. Other days it looks like traveling, here, or I know next month I'll be going to Sacramento and Chicago. So it's really exciting.
My day-to-day, so I am a clinician at an agency. So I am scheduling to meet with parents. I schedule to meet with social workers and sometimes lawyers. I speak to lawyers, individuals who might relate to the court. I might speak to them as well, school personnel. I might attend meetings with the school to support the children and other meetings within my agency. The beauty about a therapist though is you create your own schedule, and I love that. So that a lot of many other jobs, you have to follow along with their kind of like what they tell you have to do, right? But as the beauty of the therapist is it's all your schedule. You kind of pick what block works for you. Of course, you want to work with your clients to be considerate, right, of what is feasible for them. But you are scheduling your own day. And I meet with clients either at the office. We have lots of playrooms and my agency for my department. Sometimes I might see the kids and the families in their homes. I personally don't do a lot of school work because I do a lot of trauma work, and my personal lens is I don't want to do trauma work at the school for many other reasons. But so I focus primarily at either doing sessions at the office or in their home. So that's kind of a little idea about what I do. Of course, it's lots of paperwork too. If you decide to go into the mental health field here in Los Angeles, there's something called DMH, Department of Mental Health, and they require a lot of paperwork and stuff. So that's the slight downside, being, transparent, but, it's definitely feasible to do. It does take some organizational work, but it can be done, and you gotta get it done. So that's kind of, again, my day-to-day.
Hi, my name is Mitzel. Thank you so much for speaking on different issues about mental health. I really appreciate you guys. I just wanted to ask, what are some challenges that you face in your career path or professional? I know there's a podcast that you face today.
So I think we're all human, right? And we all struggle in different ways. Life challenges happen in different ways at different times, sometimes all at once. And again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but mentorship is so important because a lot of times, whether it be your program director, who is the person that's in charge of your training for either residency or fellowship, or kind of an individual that you're working with can provide kind of, hey, you should do this program, or maybe finances. You're like, I would love to do an internship, but I need to get paid. And so finding you or advising you or connecting you to paid internships. So again, that's why I think it's so important to seek out those mentors, to seek out those individuals that have the information that you don't know yet. And so again, so important, especially with life happens. They will open doors, they will make things happen so that you can finish your fellowship. And thanks to a program director, I finished my fellowship because of her. So again, so important to have those amazing mentors and advocates.
I would just caution you that if you are a parent and you're trying to have a career in mental health or other service avenues, it's very difficult to juggle both because your clients or your patients need your full attention, but your little ones and your partner need your attention as well. So it's a struggle, and it's one that you just have to be prepared to meet if you decide to go into this field.
On that note, one that was born in medical school, one that was born in residency, and one that was so it is possible. If you want to. Oh, okay, sorry. So it is possible. My daughter was born, I was pregnant with my daughter during my NPH at UCLA. She was born my 4th year of medical school. My son was born in residency. And so actually he was born as I changed from a family medicine residency into psychiatry. And then my youngest son was born, so he turned 3 months old when I started fellowship in child and adolescent psychiatry when I moved from California to Texas. So todo es posible. Everything is possible, but again, I count with an amazing community that has helped support me in this journey. But again, I don't want to discourage you in terms of being a parent because I'm a proud mom of 3.
One of the biggest challenges, well, in life and this work is boundary settings. And so I always say, like, know thyself. And that's a lot of hard work to reflect and look at yourself and understand you. It's hard and stressful and lots of things come up. But boundary settings is, you know, people typically who go into this field have a very caring heart. They love this work. They want to do this work, but sometimes they can get eaten up by their clients and they can take in too much, or sometimes, especially as a social worker or as a therapist, we have this savior complex of like, well, I just want to come and I just want to save you and I just want to help and I just want to do all the things, but we can't show up more than our clients. We can't put in more work than our clients. We have to learn to set boundaries for ourselves so we don't get burned out. And we have to do that in our personal lives. We have to learn to say no. We have to say, like, you know what, this client wants to meet at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock at night. That's not what I want to do. That's not a boundary setting for me. How are we going to work together so that we can figure out another time? And so it's also like advocating for yourself, not only with your clients and your needs too, but within your organizations or within your fields of like, sometimes we can just take on too much by our employers or our jobs, but we have a voice too. You matter, right? How you feel about certain things matters, and it's okay for you to say those things and not just take in what everyone is dishing out to you or telling you that you have to do something, right? You have the power to say no. No is a complete sentence. You do not have to always over-explain yourself. So again, boundary settings is always a challenge, and learning how to navigate that, of course, in a professional way. Because of course, you know, you want to present yourself, but it's definitely okay for you to say no, even to your employer. It's even okay for you to be like, you know what, and that I don't think I could do that, or that's not going to work for me. It's okay to do that. Again,
My job description.
Exactly. Sometimes they'll try to give you more than what, you know, is on your job description, or, you know, especially in this field, they give you too many clients.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, you know, I have to take care of myself too. And so that is a constant battle. It's a constant struggle, but it's definitely worth it. Especially if you want to remain in this field, you have to learn boundary settings with yourself, with your clients, and with whatever entity, agency, place that you end up. It is critical.
And if you're bilingual, they tend to stack on even more clients.
That is very true.
Typically you have to advocate for your pay as well. But briefly, to answer this question, being a first generation is scary and a barrier in itself. And so doing something for the first time in your family it just causes so many mental health challenges, and also physical. There's like just economical, systemic barriers as it is. So having a community mentorship, but also someone that you can talk to about this, and also your own therapy, is going to be crucial, so that you can also see how it's done and if this is truly something that you're emotionally ready for. So thank you guys so much.
Let's give it up for this esteemed panel again. I want to thank you for, I want to thank you for your insights, your wisdom, and your encouragement to pursue the field in mental health. And I just want to point out a couple of things that you all said that really stuck out to me. And one was, do your research, take your time to figure out what you want to do. So, you know, somebody asked about art and how do you fit that into mental health. And like they said, and I think this was my favorite one, is if you find a gap, you can create, if you find a gap, create it, right? Make something of it. Whoever knew that there was art in therapy, right? Like, I mean, of course, I guess, from the 0 to 5s, right? But that was something that I really appreciated that you guys said. And then the other one is, use your mentors. Mentorship is very important. Set up coffees, interview them, ask them those questions, because you may not know about the mental health and the various pathways or different ways that you can go to service that. And then lastly, I think the other one I really enjoyed is take inventory of your achievements, do loving affirmations. I think that always just fills our heart, right? And makes us feel better about ourselves to continue our journey. So again, thank you to all. We have a little gift here for you. Yes. I'll go ahead and close that. You can just stand, they'll take a quick photo. So I just want to ask you one more time, if you can please fill out the QR code, if you can just scan the QR code to fill out our evaluation form. We'll be more than happy to do additional programming and really something around something that students would like to hear. So please use the QR codes on your tables, and then please enjoy the rest of the food. There's so much food. We ordered so much food. So take a burrito with you if you want. And then I just want to reiterate the call to action that, we need women of color, people of color to be serving in these mental health spaces. So really do consider you have a great group up here that if you have questions, you can ask them. And then the impact you can have on, I guess I should say the interest, if you have interest in helping people, we urge you to consider a career in mental health field. The impact that you can have on communities like ours is great. And as you heard from our speakers, it's really gratifying work. So the panel might be over, but we're not fully finished. We have tabling outside. So please take a minute to stop by. We have Mi Mentor, which is a student support mentorship organization committed to supporting the next generation of healthcare professionals. And that could be you. And then I also want to let you know that we have a table for Charles Drew University, which Ms. Sylvia had mentioned earlier. And it's a private university focused on diversity in the health sciences. So again, I just want to thank you for your time. And if you have any questions about the poll or about Hope, you can find any one of us, staff, myself, Johanna, Natalie, and then there's Emily, and we have Lauren back here who you can't see, but she's really cool and she's smart too. So feel free to stop by, ask us any questions. And again, just thank you for investing this time in you, and we'll do something again and hope to see you soon. Give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you.
Wake up in the morning feeling like P. Diddy. Put my glasses on the door. I'm gonna hit this city. Before I leave, brush my teeth with a bottle of Jack. 'Cause when I leave for the night, I ain't coming back. I'm talking pure on my toes, trying on all our clothes. It's blowing up my bones. Try to play my favorite seeds. But I'm taking the prize. It's trying to get a little tips. Don't stop me.